Matt, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey Kyle, good to be back.
The last time you were on the podcast, you gave us kind of a rundown of cryptocurrency and hot wallets, and you worked at Coinbase then, and now you're working for a different exchange, Gemini. And
Yeah.
I recently started reading the book Bitcoin Billionaires, which is about the Winklevoss twins, who are the owners of Gemini. And it was interesting reading about like the early days in Bitcoin. I recently got into it after our conversation is when I first got a little taste of Bitcoin, and then more in 2020 I started to get more into cryptocurrencies and stuff. But reading about the early days, like when the Winklevoss twins got a hold of it, and they're like, "Oh, this is going to be huge," and I think it was back in like maybe 2012, I want to say. They were trying to get large sums of Bitcoin. I think it wound up being like a total of $11 million. And they had to go through this exchange that was called Mt. Gox. And Mt. Gox was run by this guy out of Japan. And it was really complicated to have to get it. And there was issues with, latency, and it was hard to acquire Bitcoins back then. And so I was wondering if maybe we could talk a little bit about that in the context of, where we were then and where we came, and just talk maybe a little bit about Bitcoin and, what the real innovation there was, and how far we've come over these years. It's a big question, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's timely. We're hitting all-time highs lately, and today it was 55,000 today. I mean, and we hit a $1 trillion market cap.
Yeah, and it's February 19th today for those that are watching this in the future. It's February 19th, 2021. So
right. Who knows what it'll be by then, by the time anyone listens to it. So back then when you were buying from Mt. Gox, you were literally wiring money to a foreign entity, trusting that it ended up there correctly. And I mean, Mt. Gox is Magic the Gathering online exchange is what it originally was for. So like this guy was selling Magic cards and he pivoted into Bitcoin. And it's like, knowing what I know about what you need to do to secure that stuff, it's not surprising you got hacked. And I remember back then, I was an engineer and working at this. I was at a party one time and someone's like, "Oh, we want to build this Bitcoin thing for, cross border payments." And I looked and it was like $115 each then. And I was like, "Oh, it's over. Like, why would I join a Bitcoin company when it's already $115? Like, because I didn't get it." And I think this is like what happens for a lot of people when they start getting into crypto, is they start with seeing the price, and like they see price go up, price go down, and that's about the extent of their familiarity with the technology. And if that's as far as your involvement goes or your understanding goes, it can seem completely erratic for why people would put value in this thing, why it would go up or down. And it just seems like play money. But when you start getting into kind of why Bitcoin was made and what benefits it provides, you start to kind of understand how this could end up being so valuable, where you have a digital currency that is not facilitated by any one organization. It is censorship resistant. And these are like terms that are used a lot in the industry, but like basically meaning no one can stop you from using it. If you have access to the internet, you can use this like piece of data to hold value. And that's incredibly powerful because there's all sorts of organizations that control the access to capital. There's nations that don't have access to capital. There's people that take fees and exploit these transactions for their own profit. when it's really just as simple as a transaction online. And like, it doesn't need to involve all these middlemen. It doesn't need to involve these parties that want to decide whether or not you can have that money or transact that money. It can just work online. And like, when you start to get into how that actually happens, I started getting into that in like 2015, 2016, and it started to kind of click for me. Then that's when you really start to understand how this is valuable, because it makes you want to get involved because you realize the impact it can have. And here we are now in 2020, where there's a whole, you know, landscape of different currencies that accomplish different things for different reasons. And there's a huge amount of value in it. You know, I think there's 1.6 trillion total market cap in the entire industry. And, you know, a trillion of that is just Bitcoin alone. So I think like, I expect it'll grow much more than that. You know, it's like, if you compare the utility and benefit of the cryptocurrency industry today, it's providing more valuable than gold is, and gold is a larger market cap. So I expect cryptocurrency to continue growing.
And what gives Bitcoin its value?
Yeah, it's a good question. And that's like the most common question. I think like people often say scarcity, or people often say that it's, you know, provides some utility. And I mean, I don't know. I think that like why humans value something or find value in it can't really be reduced down to one answer. I think that it serves a purpose to, you know, especially in our society today, it serves a purpose to store value in a digital age. It serves its purpose to be easily transacted, that you don't have to wait 2 to 3 days for your bank to send an electronic payment. It even serves a purpose to like hedge against, you know, government states, that you don't really like the direction that, you know, an economy is going, or the inflation is going, or whatever it might be, depending on your nation. Even if it's, you know, even if it's just storing value in that environment, that can be incredibly valuable to you, and can actually be more valuable than the fiat currency that you get from your government. So, you know, if we don't really question what gives a greenback its value, it's the same thing as what gives Bitcoin its value.
It's kind of the story behind it, right? Like it's been, you know, I think Satoshi Nakamoto came out with a white paper saying like, here's a currency that, you know, like you said, is censorship resistant. You don't need a government to say this is real. It's backed by math essentially. So it's the math equations that, you know, give it. It's scarce, like you said. There's only going to be 21 million ever, and so, and I think that story has kind of proven itself over time too. You know, like it's been tried. Like governments have tried to quash it, and it's just you can't. It's been I've heard it called the sewer rat of the cryptocurrency or blockchain space, because it's just been able to survive regardless of whatever happens. And, you know, the more, you know, uncertainty, or, you know, the more fun that's shed on it, the more it just keeps pumping up, you know? And so it's kind of that, like what you said, it's, you know, we don't really know what makes people value stuff, but it's that kind of the narrative, the story around it. If it turned out you could hack Bitcoin, or you could spend more than the same Bitcoin over and over again, and you could fudge the system, that would probably make it go down significantly, right? People would lose their faith in it. So, but that, I mean, that hasn't happened. It's not likely to happen. It seems like it's been able to be proven pretty well to get us from, you know, it was a few cents when it first came out, and it's like you said, over 50K now, which is insane. It's funny. Yeah. My sister just texted me today, and she's like, is now a good time to get into crypto? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. But
it's like the best time to plant a tree, right? Like the best time was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's what I should have told her. I'm like, probably question mark. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. I don't want to tell you that. I mean, definitely don't put your life savings into it. But
Yeah, right.
anyway, so yeah, I think that's I think Bitcoin is, and the more I get into it, the more I read about it and learn about it, kind of caught the bug and just realized that this is a really interesting thing. Like this is in an age where like our lives are digital now, right? Like we have like online personalities. It's like this is our online money. Like our lives have largely moved over to the internet, and even like dollars, like you get paid from your employer. It's usually put right into your bank account. You don't even see the actual dollar. So it's like,
especially during the pandemic, like I have a hard time remembering the last time I used actual physical cash. Maybe I like paid a toll or something. I don't remember, but like it's only a handful of times that I've used cash in the past year.
Yeah. So it's like you said, it's proven to be super valuable. One of the things that, as I started to research and get into this thing, I started to learn about was, Bitcoin, you can only really do three things. You can send it, you can receive it, and you can hold it. You can't do anything other than that. But what I've learned is Ethereum's come along, and it's kind of been like this new project where now not only can you, do those things, but now you can have smart contracts. We can put some logic in it. So if this thing happens, then this thing can happen. And there's a whole ecosystem of these different smart contracts that can interact with each other. They're all open source, so you can have one contract interact with another contract, and it's really cool because now you can do things which called like decentralized finance, which is taking what you normally do with a centralized bank or centralized exchange, and we could talk about centralized and decentralized. But the thing I like about DeFi is now, if I take, let's say I had $10,000 and I want to deposit it into my bank, the bank's going to turn around and loan out 9,000 of that dollars. So they only have to keep 10% of what they have. And then they earn interest on that. So they're earning interest on your money. So what the beauty of, I think what the DeFi space and what Ethereum has done is now you can take your dollars and you can loan it out. You can loan it out. You can borrow money. You can stake your money. You can yield farm it. And we can get into some of those things in a bit here. Yeah. But like, there's a lot of cool things you can do, and there's more things that people are coming out with every day. And so, yeah, I was just, maybe you could just talk a little bit about the what's the ecosystem like today. What do you see, like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about utility in the industry. Like we talk about, what can this token do that is uniquely beneficial for its holder. And like you said, crypto earlier on, like just Bitcoin, great store of value. That's utility case. Payments, send and receive, like that's great because even with payments, like Western Union takes like 11% of remittances from cross-border payments, and you can pay $1 to send crypto across borders, and that means that the people get to keep more of that money. So payments was a great improvement. That was one of the first most obvious use cases of cryptocurrency. Then in 2017 we saw ICOs, and this was raising capital. That you said, I have an idea, I want you to pay me for it, and when it goes really well, we'll all do well together. And raising capital was another utility case that drove a lot of adoption in crypto, and that was, I think, when it got on a lot of people's radar for the first time. After 2017, there wasn't a whole lot of new utilities showing up. Like there were a few different ideas, but it wasn't until DeFi where you started to see some real traction around this being a good use case for utility, that in the same way that payments disrupted MoneyGram and Western Union, ICOs disrupted venture capital. Now we're seeing traditional financial services being disrupted by crypto. And that looks like you said, if I go and put my money in my savings account, I'm essentially allowing that bank to go make money on my money, and they'll give me a small portion of that. Well, we don't need the bank to do that now. And we can create a system, which is what DeFi is, that you put the money in and you get a certain percentage yield on that money that you put into the system. And the protocol at the protocol level will be willing to loan that cryptocurrency out to another individual that is willing to pay interest for that loan. And this is, trustless parties. You don't know the person that's taking the loan recipient doesn't know who's providing the liquidity. And we don't need to, because everything is bound to the blockchain. And in order to make sure that my money is safe when I put liquidity in, the protocol requires over collateralization. So if the loan recipient wants to take out, as an example, 1 Ethereum loan, they need 1 Ethereum, they might have to put in 1.5 times the value of collateral to get access to that. And so then, people are saying, well, if I have 1.5 times collateral, why do I take out the loan? And this is mainly because, the one thing you get from having a central organization is someone to bear the risk. So a bank bears the risk if the loan defaults. But we don't have anyone to bear that risk. We're not willing to say the liquidity provider bears that risk. So for me, say that I need to pay someone $1,000. I have $1,000, $2,000 worth of ETH, but I don't want to sell it to get access to that capital. So I can put that as collateral into DeFi. I can get a $1,000 DAI token loan. I can sell that, give the money to the person that I owe $1,000 to, and then down the line, when I get my money back, I can give back the $1,000, pay a little interest, and get my collateral back. And that is just strictly access to money in the same way that you'd get a loan from a bank. But I can do that from my phone. I can just open an app on my phone, press a few buttons, and within an hour, after transactions settle and stuff, I could have that money. And in order to go through that same process with a bank, I don't know how long it takes. It takes a long time. And last time I took out a loan at the bank, I had a big stack of papers to sign. Half of it, I didn't understand the wording of it. And I don't know, I paid a higher rate from a bank. It just seems like there's so much more efficiencies gained by removing that middleman and having the person that wants to get the money, get it directly from the source of the person providing it. And you get better margins, you get better rates. And overall, I think it's the type of thing that when you see it work, it's an obvious evolution of financial services because it is more efficient. And if something can be more efficient, I think that it'll win in the end.
Wow, there's so many directions I want to go there. Maybe let's talk about this. So you mentioned DAI, and so DAI is kind of the decentralized stable coin. And you talk about you talked about that whole process just kind of in general. What types of protocols out there? Are there any particular protocols out there that you think are doing a good job at this? If you could talk maybe a little bit about one of the protocols and maybe explain DAI a little bit too.
Yeah, you bet. So we'll start with kind of what the base DeFi protocols are. And there's a whole bunch of them out there, but some of the higher profile ones are like Aave or Uniswap. Those are the types of platforms where you have pools of liquidity that can be borrowed or can be used to support a DEX. So if you say like, I have one currency, I want to convert it to another currency, it will be able to calculate the current market price for that, and will have liquidity stores available to be the counterparty for whatever you're trading. And this is kind of like the newer era of DEXs. Like the older era of DEXs would be more of like a bulletin board system, where like
And
someone
DEX,
would say like
DEX
decentralized exchange.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So this is like the idea of trading, you know, like I have one thing, I want to get another thing. And the older DEXs would be like a bulletin board system where you'd say, I have one ETH and I want this much for it. And someone could take that offer, and there wouldn't be a kind of matching system under the hood. Like you couldn't have two parties that just said, I'm willing to sell it this, I'm willing to buy it this, and match. It was more of like one-off bid and offer, take and give. But now, because of the developments largely by Uniswap earlier last year, they're able to calculate, kind of guarantee a market rate for the price based on their liquidity. So if you have a lot of Ethereum and you want to trade for DAI, the price of one converting to the other will shift as the supply changes. And the thinking is behind it, and it pans out to work, that if the price gets too far off one way or the other, someone will put more liquidity in to earn a better yield to replace back where the price should be at the market rate on like centralized exchanges and stuff like that. And this is called a bonding curve, that the price will fluctuate based on the supply of the system. And what happens is you financially incentivize the participants to provide more liquidity when needed, because they'll get a better yield on that, and to capitalize on a good deal. If there's oversupply of one currency, people will buy it up because it's cheaper than the market rate. And this just kind of normalizes the price into what the market rate should be. And this is all done without like a centralized exchange overseeing those order books. And it's one of the reasons why DeFi was able to get so much traction last year, because it's a much better experience to have that matching engine and automated market makers to be able to trade much more easily than you could on the previous iteration of DeFi.
Oh man, so many directions I want to go again, but let's stay on Uniswap then. So
yeah,
I mean, I would think of Uniswap and Aave to be kind of different, a little bit different. They have a little bit different functionalities. Where like Aave is like you want to borrow, or you either want to borrow or loan, tokens, versus Uniswap. I look at more of you want to. I guess it is kind of the same, but it to me, in my mind, it has a different function, because I think of Uniswap as like a decentralized Coinbase or Gemini, for example, a decentralized exchange in that way. I guess Aave, maybe because there's a lot more coins on it, or a lot more tokens rather. Versus Aave has like a limited amount, but you can loan and borrow and stuff like that.
Yeah. So like one of the reasons why DeFi has worked as well as it has is because everything within DeFi follows the ERC20 standard. And so like if you create a new token.
And can you talk about ERC20 then? Sorry.
Yeah. So ERC20, it's like a abbreviation for Ethereum Request for Commons. And it was the 20th one of those requests. And so on GitHub, where Ethereum code is written and stored, there's like a way to raise new issues and say, I want to talk about this thing. I want to talk about this thing. And way back in 2017, I think early 2017, someone said, hey, I want to like define a standard for a token. And because they wanted to be able to have a currency within one Ethereum smart contract. So if you have Ethereum as the network and Ethereum is the base currency for that, at any one address, you have a smart contract that has all the different programming to make the thing do what it's supposed to do. And so when you use Aave or you use the Uniswap, all of that functionality under the hood is all inside one smart contract, or it might be like a handful of smart contracts that it branches out to. And within that, anytime you have a token that's in DeFi, every one of them follows this ERC20 standard that they established back in 2017. And that's basically like send, receive, mint, burn, check my balance, you know, stuff like that, like basic rudimentary token handling. And because they all fit the same standard, all of them are ERC20s, you can just add another one because it's the same thing. It just has a different ticker, maybe a little different configuration, but for the most part, it's all the same thing. And then that's the same kind of ideology around DeFi, that you can piece these things together because they're all just smart contracts.
They're like Lego pieces.
Exactly. They call these like money Legos, where you can just piece them together and you start to combine things. And to your question about different DeFi protocols, there's like Wire and Finance that they route to different DeFi platforms, and it's like automated routing to the best price and the best rate and stuff like that. And that's able to do that because it can just interact with different smart contracts. So, you know, it's like, yeah, some protocols might have a few more assets than others. But like as an example, I wrote the token list for Uniswap for Gemini, and it's the default list on there now. And it's just a list of the tokens that we think are really good, but you can make your own, and you can have you can make your own token and you can trade it on Uniswap if you want, if there's liquidity. And that's cool. You know, it's like, it's very accessible. And I think it's like one of the reasons why, you know, because it's so open and everything is like the same standard, it's made building in DeFi, you know, really successful over the past year.
Yeah, that's what I really like about Uniswap is like, I mean, there's thousands of coins on there. But I guess some of the bad side is like, you know, you have people that are putting these scams on there, and then they'll take the money and run, or they'll pretend they'll like make like a contract that looks like another contract, it looks like another coin.
Yeah.
And if you don't get on the right contract, then you can be screwed. So it's always good to check on that, you know. Like you said, like Gemini's got the list of the good tokens. Make sure you find the right contract for it before you trade any of those things. And like, I like CoinGecko a lot to, you know, figure out where these different the right contracts are. That's why I really like CoinGecko.
Yeah.
Use that.
And Etherscan is good for that too.
Yep, Etherscan. Yep, definitely. I guess, so that's one of the downsides. I guess another one is if there's and now we're seeing a lot of people get into this space, and it really bogs down the system. So it'll take a long time for transactions to happen. There's also these gas fees, and gas fees have been just astronomical. So sometimes it'll take, you know, $50 to $100 just to make a transaction happen in DeFi. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what are kind of some of the solutions to this problem? I know we talked a little bit, you know, prior about layer 2 things coming out. I know that Ethereum 2's looking at some sharding stuff. So I don't know, maybe you could talk just a little bit about what are kind of some of the solutions to the system getting bogged down, gas prices. What's the future holding for us?
Yeah, for sure. It's like top of mind for everybody that's been working in it. It's real scaling issues that it's a good problem to have. You know, we experienced the same problems with Bitcoin in 2017, and like CryptoKitties was one of the first things to really test the Ethereum network, but we're way past that now. And so last December, the Beacon chain for ETH2 launched, and it was a big milestone for ETH2. They had been working on that for literally years. And it's basically the first kind of flag in the ground to get a proof of stake network running that can be compatible with the existing Ethereum network. And there's some caveats to that, but basically it's the first step towards launching ETH2. And what they're going to do as over the next 2 years or so, they are going to roll out next milestones in that process to be able to launch different shards on the ETH2 network. So a shard, like sharding in general on network, is basically the idea that you have several smaller networks that are not processing everything Ethereum is doing, but it's processing the stuff that's relevant to you. And if there is something that you try to send to that's outside of your little cluster, it knows how to route it correctly, it knows how to settle it correctly, and it knows how to finalize it in a way that is safe, that it doesn't allow for double spends, doesn't allow for reversals, and it can do that in a segregated network or partition network way. And eventually, when all the milestones are hit on the way to ETH2, the original Ethereum network will become a shard of the ETH2 network and will be switched over. And then you can scale horizontally, and you should be able to scale pretty well, all depending on how the messages are able to route between the shards. However, it's not going to get here in time. Like, we need it now. We don't want to wait 2 years for this. And so there's been alternative solutions that have been proposed and are actively being worked on now. Will probably show up around the summer for what they call layer 2. And these are often kind of roll-up solutions where you can broadcast a whole bunch of transactions on this second layer above Ethereum. And those networks can resolve faster. They can, they don't have the same kind of like bandwidth requirements as Ethereum as a base network requires. And when that layer 2 network resolves the transactions, it settles back to the Ethereum base layer. So it still depends on the Ethereum network for its security to make sure that all the transactions that happen on their network settle on Ethereum, but it reduces the number of transactions that are actually being processed on Ethereum by a large margin. And even Vitalik himself in a forum post was talking about how it's very likely that layer 2 solutions are going to solve the scaling issue really well this summer and could potentially provide even more scaling than sharding can. And even though sharding might be a cleaner solution because you don't have these like multiple layers and stuff, he's like, it's entirely possible that we get accustomed to the layer 2 pattern and we are enjoying a lot of scaling and we just never do sharding because we don't need it anymore. And that's a possibility, and it will be interesting to see how it plays out. But it's not like sharding is the solution. It's entirely possible that layer 2 could be, or it's possible that we'll have some hybrid of both.
And so layer 2, so these transactions, they happen off the blockchain but get settled on the blockchain after a bunch of them happen or something like that. Am I understanding correctly?
It's similar to like Lightning Network. That's like the Bitcoin layer 2. Mm-hmm. And you're essentially just trying to have a way to process transactions that will ultimately settle on the network that you're operating on, because you don't want to lose the security you get from all the people running Ethereum miners, but you need to find some way to alleviate some of the pressure that's coming through on that network, and that can be done by consolidating down these transactions on the second layer into what they call like a roll up into the base layer.
So is there any risks to that? Because you did mention that, you know, the reason we do it this way and the reason that we have these gas prices because the Ethereum miners are the ones that are verifying that this transaction happened on all these different nodes all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess that still happens, but it happens off the chain before it comes back on. So is there any kind of risks to that are inherent to that?
Yeah, I think if everything moved over to this system and like there were like nothing but roll-up transactions on Ethereum, that would test that network a lot, because then you're just switching one chain's problems for another. I think the expectation is that some portion of the volume will move to a roll-up, and it'll depend on as people adopt it, because you'll need to like adjust your wallet software. that some portion will move, and it'll kind of alleviate that pressure enough to be able to support like growing the Ethereum network as we need. And I think like there's a few different implementations. I think Optimism is one of the, Optimism and Loopring are two of the projects that are coming along pretty well. And I think they're going to be making design choices that will affect that question as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch and see what happens. So you mentioned Ethereum 2, Ethereum 2, we're looking at moving from proof of work to proof of stake. Can you just explain what the difference is there?
Yeah, for proof of work, you are taking the next set of transactions, you are running through what's called a hashing function, which just basically means you take a big chunk of data, you run it through a computer function, it spits out a unique identifier for that data. So you say it would take like 5 transactions, send 1 Bitcoin here, 1 Bitcoin there, and that text in binary format gets converted into a hash. And if they find a hash with a certain number of leading zeros on it, that's considered valid. And all the other miners agree that that's a valid block, and that's mining in proof of work. And in that scenario, it's really just comes down to who can guess the most hashes, because you just try one hash, then you try another one, then you try another one, you try another one. And they'll be doing millions and millions of these to find a block. And it takes energy and it takes time, and it's intentionally competitive to make a lot of people trying to get that correct hash. And that's why you get a reward for finding it, because you're putting in the effort to find it. And it's what prevents people from just making up their own blocks quickly to rewrite history and to decide where things go. Like it is intentionally difficult, and you have to show that you've put in the work to produce a block to secure what transactions should get processed. And like that's what we kind of depend on now for Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's all sorts of criticisms that come with that. It's expensive on energy. It's unnecessarily costly for this competition to occur to find the next block.
I think I read something just on the energy thing. I just read something recently that it was, I think the amount of energy spent on Bitcoin mining last year was like enough to power Argentina or something like that.
Yeah, I read that as well. It's also, I agree. There's like, I like proof of stake. I think that it is a better solution. However, I just wonder like how much electricity JP Morgan uses in all of their buildings across the world every year. So, I mean, I don't know.
They said that's similar too. Like that is a similar thing. So,
yeah. But with proof of stake, what we really want to accomplish is like, we want to have the same level of security or even better, but we don't want to have to do this like guess and check process with the hashes to see if we found a valid one. So instead of using that like raw like compute power as the incentive to secure the network, we leverage financial incentive to secure the network. And we accomplish that by having anyone that wants to produce blocks stake their funds in the same way of like putting money into a pot. When you're playing poker, you're like putting money in, say, all right, that money's in there, and you're agreeing if I mess up, you can take it. And the more money you put in, the more likely you are to produce the next block. So you're incentivized to put more money into the system, and the more money you have in the system, the more incentivized you are to behave and do it right. So in a scenario where we have a group of miners and we're all in proof of stake and we all put money into the system and we say, all right, everybody puts in 10 Ethereum or whatever, and someone comes along and puts in 50 Ethereum. They're going to get the chance to produce a block 5 times more often or so. It's calculated depending on how much you put into stake. And that person, if they mess up or they do things the wrong way or they act maliciously, the thinking is that it's going to hurt the value of the Ethereum they put in by more than they could stand to gain by behaving that way.
Mm.
And they don't have any incentive to misbehave or act maliciously, because in order for them to have, in a good decentralized system, in order for them to have enough frequency of producing blocks to be able to consistently execute something like a 51% attack, they would be just ruining the value of the coins that they have in there, and they'd be getting slashed because they'd be getting taken by the system because they're not producing valid blocks. Every other miner in that system gets rewarded if they point out a problem. So if both of us are miners and I produce a bad block, you can point out, hey, they just double spent that balance, or they didn't produce this the right way, or they didn't produce a block at all when they were supposed to. And every time that you point it out, my stake gets slashed and you get a reward.
Mm.
So you have this like system where you don't need to have crazy computing power. You can have really fast blocks. You just need to have everyone behave and have good financial incentive to do so. And I think like there's a lot of proof of stake chains out there today that are, you know, really fast, really, you know, power efficient, all that good stuff.
Thanks for explaining that. I've never heard it explained like that, and I think I finally understand it. So
Good.
thanks
Nice.
for that. Thanks for that explanation. In that model, and I guess I was thinking about this, like, because I really like the idea of DeFi, right? That like anyone can get into this, and you mentioned kind of like, you know, the kind of the dream of it, of, you know, part of it, or Cardano, for instance, and we could probably talk about other blockchains other than Ethereum, but to kind of connect the banked and the unbanked world, right? I guess in that proof of stake scenario, so we're talking about this type of money where it's not really, nobody really decides anything about it. Like you don't have a centralized government that's, you know, deciding things about money. There's been examples of, you know, governments where they say, no, this isn't good anymore. Or Venezuela, for example, like their money, like people had to have wheelbarrows full of it to actually buy anything for, you know, for, I don't even know what's happening there now, but like those types of things can happen, right? And I guess, and so the idea is that, you know, the coins or tokens, coins in the DeFi space, they're not tied to any of that. And then when I started thinking about like proof of stake, I mean, the stakers are kind of the elites that are running this thing, you know, like, and so I'm just like, is it just kind of swapping out, you know, the problem with and creating a new one? I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. That is, you know, stuff I've been thinking about anyway.
This gets into the you know, decentralized ethos of like, it's great to have the option to hold currency yourself, like on a Trezor, a ledger in your house. But like I personally lost a lot of ETH because I forgot the password. I feel like it's a rite of passage for people that work in crypto a lot to lose some cryptocurrency because you didn't write down the private key, or you didn't like do the thing because I was new to crypto and I didn't know. And like, that's the risk of decentralization. Like, you are solely responsible for your own sovereignty. And in a scenario with like staking that I described, in ETH2, the maximum staked position is 32 ETH, which works out to like $250,000. It's more now or whatever back then. But you can't stake more than 32 ETH on one machine.
Okay.
And this is an attempt at decentralization. So we'll play this out and like, what happens then if I have 32 ETH at home and I spin up my computer, or I even connect to AWS and I spin up a computer there, and I want to stake my ETH. Well, I have to make sure that thing is running 24/7 and responsive 24/7. And if it misses a block validation that it's supposed to hit, I lose money. So that alone, most people have a hard time with that level of like site reliability, of making sure a computer somewhere is running and responsive 24/7 for years. So that's kind of self-selecting out, even though we're decentralized. The second one is that like 32 ETH is still a lot of money. You know, like that's a lot of ETH. So yeah, it's better than these really enormous like stakers, but it's still like a lot of ETH to have and high requirements to be able to run a staking operation correctly. The third one is that what we're seeing happen is most of the centralized firms are just running a lot of instances, and they're just running their normal balance, but with like many staking machines rather than one staking machine with one large balance. And there's reasons for why it's good to have many staking machines, not just one large balance, for security reasons. But you're consistently seeing that in mining, whether it's proof of work or proof of stake, there's a consolidation around the people that know how to do it well.
Right.
And because they're willing to do it and take the risk of doing it wrong. And as a result, the people that don't know how to do it and don't know how to handle their private keys correctly, they're willing to say, I'm okay with you holding on to it, and you'll give me a yield for that. But like, that's kind of the nice thing of having a bank or having a central organization that takes care of that stuff for you. Like, I've seen multiple cold storage systems. I cannot build those systems at home. I just can't. And to be able to have the security of those systems and have access to staking operations, that's the benefits of working with those like central entities.
Interesting. And so, yeah, that's something. So that kind of brings up another topic that a friend of mine, me and my friend, we were texting back and forth today because we were looking at Binance Coin. And it's just blowing up today. It went up to like I think like close to 300.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And I've been hearing about Binance Smart Chain and how, because of these gas fees and stuff, they've really taken off, and the coins that are on that blockchain are really taken off. And I haven't really been in it. I've been meaning to like educate myself a bit on it, but I haven't. A friend of mine was saying that, I've heard that, Binance Smart Chain isn't decentralized. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, and what makes something decentralized versus centralized.
Yeah, I think the most important thing with any of these decentralization conversations, like even how I just said, like, yeah, there's benefits to having centralization. Having the option to be decentralized is critical. Like, you need to be able to have self-sovereignty if you want it. And as we see Ethereum gas prices get higher, we're going to see more DeFi ecosystems and alternative chains gain traction, because you lose a large margin of what you're getting if you use Ethereum a lot right now, because you're paying so much in fees. So I think the ability to move your currency to a different chain, or the ability for you to take any of your currencies off any of these chains and be self-sovereign and hold it at home, that's the critical piece of decentralization that I don't think can ever go away. That's why like Robinhood got so much flack about allowing you to buy and sell Bitcoin and Ethereum, but not be able to send it to a hosted wallet or to your own wallet. And they were saying that's not really crypto. That's just like an investment account.
Right.
You're just paying someone else to buy it for you and then sell it for you at some point.
Not your keys, not your crypto is kind of
exactly
the saying that goes in the crypto space, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's, I think, in my mind, anything that kind of has those characteristics is decentralized in my mind. There will be centralized players, but like, it's decentralized if you have those characteristics.
So
Binance is, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So if you're able to, like, some wallets, you can't get your own, they won't let you have your own key, right? So like, if you can't grab your own key from it, that's not a decentralized wallet, is it?
Right. So I think like in Binance's case, and a few others like Ripple and some of the others, they'll have what's called like authorized validators, where in like ETH2, if I wanted to, I could download the software, plug in a computer, start my staker, and I can start mining the new network. And same goes for Bitcoin. it's probably not profitable because there's such huge mining operations. But if I wanted to, I could download the software, plug it in, and start guessing hashes myself and try to find the next block. I might hit it for, like lottery, and I get like the block reward, which would be a huge amount of money, but it's probably not likely. So in Binance and some of these other ones, they go and they work with organizations and they say, or they run them themselves and say, we're going to run nodes, but only the people that we know are going to run them. And this is like they're authorized to run these pieces of software. And yeah, it's potentially decentralized to some extent, where it's not just one company's servers, it's software that's run on different servers and different clouds and stuff like that, and they all coordinate the same way a blockchain does. But it is different than pure decentralization, where there's not a governing body that is saying you can be a part of it, you can't, even at the block production level. So like anyone that wants to can go and send transactions in the Binance chain, but not everyone can go and produce blocks. And I think that's the distinction.
The mafia. They have like their Binance mafia. So you have to be part of the mafia to be a node operator.
Same as Libra or DM now, where they're working with specific institutions to be able to operate that network, and they were selected because they were trusted, and like they didn't want just anyone showing up running a node. And it, the same reason why there's some benefits to centralized exchanges, there's some benefits to centralized networks as well. It's a gradient on decentralization. It's not black or white.
Cool. Do you want to? So we mentioned a little bit about these other blockchains that are popping up. Is there any that you're super interested in? Any ones that you want to talk about?
Yeah, totally.
What's on your mind?
I'll admit there are a lot of chains that they come out of nowhere, and I'm like, man, that looks so cool. How is that not on my radar? And it's tough because like in a bull market, you kind of have bull market roulette, where like every day there's like some chain will go 70%, and you're like, what's great about that chain? And no matter how I look at this, I will have a small view of everything that's going on in crypto, because there's just so much stuff happening. And obviously with all the obvious disclaimers that this is not financial advice, I think that there is going to be a trend where the stuff that's happening on DeFi is like reproducing a lot of financial services we see in legacy finance. And I think that crypto will continue to eat legacy finance until you can do everything just as well on DeFi as you can today in the banking system. And I don't think that Ethereum can support all that. And it might take a couple of years. Maybe they'll figure it out in time, whatever. Roll-ups will work, maybe. But in the meantime, you've got other chains that are providing not only their own like layer one platforms, but they're providing EVM compatible layer one platforms. So EVM is the Ethereum virtual machine. It's how you execute the smart contracts on Ethereum. And there are new chains like Polkadot and Avalanche and Cosmos, and some of these newer projects that can run the EVM in their chain. And what you're seeing with some of those new developments, new chains, is that it's not so much that it's like an alternative to Ethereum. Like Polkadot, they call it like a meta protocol, where if you separate, there's like two components in a blockchain for like smart contracts. You have like the consensus layer, and you have the virtual machine where you do the actual execution. And in Polkadot, you've got a consensus layer called substrate. And in Cosmos, you've got a consensus layer called tendermint. And they're kind of building these like base consensus mechanisms that you can put different virtual machines on top of. So you can have a full blockchain that is running the Ethereum virtual machine, and have it be consensus compatible with other blockchains that are running other virtual machines. And like Avalanche right now, they have an exchange chain and they have a smart contract chain, and you can transfer between them, but you can run like virtual, like Ethereum contracts on one chain, you can't on the other. And this sort of like blending of interoperability between chains is going to have a couple effects. One is that it's going to make it that much easier for people to leave Ethereum, because now you can just literally copy and paste over. And you can see this if you go to Avalanche. There is an app called Pangolin, like the animal, and Pangolin is 100% Uniswap, but it works with Ethereum tokens on Avalanche. And it's kind of mind-blowing, because it kind of breaks a lot of your current models of what blockchains are where and what you can do with them. But you're going to see more and more of this. Like, there's going to be more interoperability between different chains. And I think that the assets that support that trend are going to do well.
Wow, that's crazy. That does kind of break my mind a little bit.
Yeah, mine too.
Wow, I'm gonna have to look into Avalanche. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think like parachains are a common term for this. Like Cosmos, I think, has been around the longest. Polkadot is one of the largest. They're all doing interesting things.
Yeah, and so the parachain. So I understood, and I just started learning about it recently. But parachain on Polkadot is like, I don't know. I'm gonna get it wrong, but like, there's like these little like blocks that you can put your Polkadot into in order to grab, or to, I don't know, to get different tokens on the Polkadot blockchain. It's kind of the way I understand it. I don't really understand it.
Yeah, think of it at the chain level, less so the token level. So like you can, like, I think Cosmos calls it like star ports, where you can peg one network to another. So you kind of get this interoperable transactions. And all of it's kind of based on the idea that we want to be able to have secure transactions represented in this like mutual state. And I mean, it's kind of crazy when you think about the idea of some currency leaving the network. And it's really just like making sure that that currency, if it is represented elsewhere, can't be spent again while it is. You know, you want to always avoid the double spend problem.
Yeah.
And make sure that if you are representing these assets in different ways, you're not spending it twice. Same goes for stable coins. Like, if we have a bank account and we mint one token for every dollar in the bank account, you're trusting that we're not spending those dollars. Like, it has to be one-to-one. So like, that requires trust of the organization providing the stable coin. And this is just a decentralized trust that the protocol is preventing that from happening.
And so so it sounds like Polkadot and Avalanche, Cosmos are kind of, you think, and so I guess, like you said, Ethereum, and I guess the problem, maybe talk a little bit about the problem of Ethereum. I mean, it's super slow, right? Like, is that the issue that we're seeing, or?
Well, it's just, I mean, if you think about that proof of work model that I was talking about, every time there's a block every 15 seconds on Ethereum. Mm-hmm. And if you have a miner that's producing the block, they grab that set of transactions, they grab it from the top of the list that has the highest fees, because they want to be paid the most. So they'll grab the top of the list and run through and find a block that matches the valid requirements, and then they do it again. But if the transactions are getting added faster than you can fit into a block in 15 seconds, then in order for your transaction to get to the top of the list, you have to pay a higher fee. You could put it at the bottom of the list and just hope that they manage to get to the bottom, but there's a good chance you won't ever get your transaction processed. So in order to get it processed, you put it at the fee that's a little higher than everyone else's, so that you get picked up and put in the next block. Eventually, this keeps happening and it drives the fee rate up to a point where in order for you to get in the next block, you got to pay quite a bit of money to beat out all the other people in the list. And like, that's strictly because there's a lot of volume of transactions that need to be processed. And it's not anything to do with like the miners. Like the miners are doing the same process they've always been doing, but there's just a longer list in what they call the memory pool.
But for these other blockchains, I mean, you said one block in 15 seconds. What is do you know what Avalanche is by chance, or
faster than that? It's faster than that. I think Solana is one that's like particularly fast.
Yeah, I remember learning there's like 50,000 in a second or something like that.
Yeah, something crazy like that. I don't fully know how that stuff happens that quickly. I mean, I think it uses some other variation of consensus or some other mechanism to be able to have confidence that executes that quickly. Even when we were working at Dfinity, some of the ways in which we were able to get that kind of speed requires more than just proof of work. You know, like it's the process of finding blocks that fast. I don't think it really works. You need to find other consensus mechanisms.
Interesting. Well, I have like a million other things that we could probably talk about, but if people are still listening, maybe maybe I don't know if we bored everyone to death with going into all these DeFi wormholes.
It's one or the other. Either people like just have more questions or their eyes have glazed over about 45 minutes ago and they're like, all right, let me know when you tell me how much Bitcoin's going to be.
Yeah. Maybe we could wrap it up with you could talk a little bit about maybe some projects or things you're excited about at Gemini. What's Gemini working on? We've been talking about DeFi. What DeFi stuff are you guys working on, or what do you guys got going? I'm not super familiar with Gemini. I got their credit card. I'm on their list for their credit card. I'm excited for that. Nice. So I know that they have a credit card coming out that will pay rewards in, I don't know if they're paying in Bitcoin or what cryptocurrency.
I think you choose. We're doing awesome stuff there. I recently took over as the PM for the wallet team. So we're kind of deciding how we want to, really push the industry in a good direction. And I think both Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, they both really believe in DeFi, and they think that DeFi is the future. And it's great to see the traction there and the support from Gemini to be able to like help with that however we can. One thing that we've been working on lately that we announced, I don't know, a few months ago is wrapped Filecoin. And this is, again, that same idea of the ERC20 compatible token that is usable in DeFi. The Filecoin chain is a totally separate blockchain. And a lot of times people want to trade Filecoin in DeFi, but it's not compatible. You can't get there from here. So the way that we're helping with that is we're going to work with some select merchants to give us Filecoin that we custody for them, and we issue them wrapped Filecoin. And that wrapped Filecoin is going to be the ERC20 standard, and you can use it in DeFi. So just like you can trade a stable coin like DAI, you can trade Filecoin, even though it's not an ERC20 asset. Cool.
Yeah, that's what they did. Bitcoin just came out, or somebody came out with wrapped Bitcoin recently, where it's the same kind of concept, right?
Yeah. Wrapped assets, I think, and tokenization in general is going to be a big part of the DeFi trend.
Cool. Well, all right. Any parting words, or people want to get in touch with you or follow you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. I really appreciate having me on again. I think like at least once per bull run, we should do this.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if you're familiar. There's a test network on Ethereum called Ropsten, and my Twitter is RopstenRich, and you can find me there. I don't have much of an online presence. I'm too busy working on crypto things, but hit me up. Cool. I'm usually very receptive to chatting about crypto basically all the time.
Before we did this podcast, I looked up your Twitter and just browsed some stuff. but I was like, oh, rough side, I understand what that means now, because I started doing
Yeah.
some stuff on, I've been messing around with just like making my own test coins, which is cool. It's fun. I recommend people go to remix.ethereum.org and you can make your own coins, and you can
Yeah.
YouTube some stuff. It's relatively simple, but to get actually some kind of what's the word I'm looking for, utility out of it. Utility, that's the word, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had a buddy that like we made a March Madness bracket with it.
Really?
And,
that's awesome.
And it's like you could collect dues for people putting in their Ethereum,
cool.
and it just paid out automatically.
That's cool. Did you do that in the main net or?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Because I just
did that at
stuff.
Coinbase.
I just did the Rinkerby test net, but
you got to use Robson, man. It's most reliable.
That's where it's at. Okay, all right. Well,
That's
if I get back into it and try to, but it was cool. It was really cool to like see. Like I just kind of went through a tutorial and just like went through the motions. I didn't really know what any of it really meant. I'm not a programmer, but it was cool to see my transactions happen on Etherscan. I was like, I did it. I made a transaction. It was cool.
You poke it and it shows up, and you're like, oh my gosh, it does the thing that it says it does. It's like so magical when you get to work.
It's so cool. It's like I'm like geeking out about this stuff, and I would have 2 years ago I would have never thought about that. But anyway, so
one of the craziest things about that is that you can go and do that, play around the weekend, and effectively like do the same thing with an account that billions of dollars are running through.
Yeah.
And like it's really hard to make your own bank in the US banking system. Like that's really hard to do.
Right.
This is easy to do. That's really hard to do. And it's like, it's crazy.
That's why I got so excited about it. Yeah, thanks. And I guess I couldn't really explain it, but that's why, it's like, this is what these guys are doing. I mean, it's a little more complicated. They got more code around it and like, they know what they're doing.
Still
but
basically the same idea.
Right. Awesome. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun, man. Thanks for jumping on here again. And yeah, let's do it again once a bull run. I like that idea.
For sure, man. Take it easy.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.